Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Banks and Triads Working Together to Combat Scams Against Older Americans. This webinar is being provided by the U.S. Department of Justice Elder Justice Initiative and the Office for Victims of Crime Training and Technical Assistance Center. As with all technology, we may at some point experience a momentary lapse in the webinar session. In the event of a problem, please just be patient, remain with us, and the webinar should resume shortly. We do want to take a moment here to see that everyone is connected. So if you are having a technical problem, please type a private chat message to our technical specialist, Jason, in the feedback box. That's found on your lower right. It says chat just above it. If you cannot access the chat, you can also send Jason an email at jadams@ovcttac.org. If you have questions that come up throughout the webinar for our presenters, please type those in the chat box also. We'll take time at the end of the webinar to address any questions, as many questions as we can. And a note that our session today is being recorded. It'll be made available on the OVC TTAC and the Elder Justice Initiative training websites. The Elder Justice Initiative has put together a series of these webinars for various audiences working in the field of elder abuse and justice. So we invite you to check out those training websites and view other webinars that may be useful to you. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Julie Child, the consultant to the Elder Justice Initiative at the U.S. Department of Justice, to introduce herself and our presenters. Julie.
And we're looking forward to working with you through this webinar. We'll have some questions and I think some lively presentations. First, myself, I'm Julie Child, as Lori said. I'm an attorney and a consultant to the Elder Justice Initiative. And the Elder Justice Initiative is a part of the Department of Justice's Civil Division. And its mission is to support and coordinate the department's efforts to combat elder abuse, neglect, financial fraud, and scams that target older adults. We have several aspects of the initiative that we'd like you to take a look at ELDERJUSTICE.GOV, and that's our website, and see some of the initiatives including the Elder Justice Task Forces, the Prosecutor Video Series. There's a research section. There's an MDT guide and toolkit, financial exploitation and reporting section, and a lot about scams you can find there as well. There are also statutes and laws, and of course, our webinars are there as well. Thank you, Lori, for advancing the slide. I was speaking ahead of it, I think. So also, if you need outreach materials for presentations, we have those available on the website that you can just print right off. Pamphlets for every type of elder abuse, pamphlets on how to put together a community presentation in your area, and they're all free. So please do take a look at ELDERJUSTICE.GOV and those materials. So today we have two fabulous presenters, Corporal Kim Lopez, who is the Triad Coordinator at Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, and Elaine Dodd, who's the Executive Vice President of the Fraud Division at the Oklahoma Bankers Association. And we're so pleased to have both of them on this webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to Elaine to start.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for letting us be a part of this wonderful program. First, I'm going to share with you, I am EVP of the Fraud Division because I am the Fraud Division. We have a party of one here at Oklahoma Bankers, and actually we're the first and still only association that has a fraud division in it. I would encourage you to reach out to the people in your state to try to get something similar or have it in another place. Colorado had a something that was in their Colorado Bureau of Investigation, but one that can pull things together. I am retired law enforcement, spent 22 years with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, and because of that, it holds me in a position to really know our law enforcement people here in the state, which is pretty great, and that background has helped with networking. and it helps also to build rapport with those groups. So we are forever networking with our seniors, our bankers, and everyone is critical to the process. The final line on that slide, it's good to be old, really makes this point. As much as we can fuss about the aging process through the years, the knees are not as great, obviously, but the fact is, if we're doing our jobs right, we are every day looking for someone that can help us in what we need to and want to do. So we are uber networkers, and because of that, we can always, there's someone all across this wonderful U.S. that I can pull in to say, hey, dude, you're going to help me with this, and that is a wonderful thing in the world. So can't fuss about the aging process so much. The next slide, what we're doing at OBA again, and OBA being Oklahoma Bankers Association, we have cogs in the wheel, and it takes all of us to make it work here. Just to give you an idea of some of those, some of the parties that work together here in a wonderful way, our Oklahoma bankers, Oklahoma Securities, when we're doing investment fraud issues, Adult Protective Services, a wonderful partner, and you'll hear more about that here in a minute. The Oklahoma Senior Law Resource Center we bring to the table to help people, our law enforcement wonderful partners who very often are parts of the Triads, and Triad as a wonderful cog in this wheel, because Triad people, we train with them, they train with us, we educate each other and share stories, and that's how we're all smarter on how to help our seniors. We have geriatric researchers here who are some of the best anywhere, and dedicated prosecutors. We had a prosecutor in Oklahoma County who was just doing these cases and is no longer able to do that because of budget cuts, which are an issue everywhere. But that and area-wide aging, just to give you an idea of some of the pieces of the cogs and how our banks and triads fit into those pictures with each other. At this point, we would like to do the first of our polls. You'll find that as trained investigators, we want to know a lot about you so that you can be better served by the DOJ and the people who are trying to help. So the first poll is going to be, what is your professional background? We're just going to leave this up for a few seconds. So folks, you're going to have to be really fast and give us your answers on that. And when we see it's really populating, we can go on to the next little slide. I think it's time. Okay. Education at every level is simply our mantra, because we have found, as I'm sure you have seen in your local areas, that if you can catch someone before they have been had someone perpetrate financial exploitation on them, you're going to be better off. And that requires bank staff to know and recognize, to ask, we suggest they be politely nosy. Ask all those questions, because nothing prevents us from doing that. So if we ask enough questions, very often we can get to the fact that someone's been exploited. We educate law enforcement. I am fortunate to get to go to the Chiefs Association, or the Chiefs of Police, twice a year. They have to listen to me for 2 hours on, here's what the frauds look like, here's what you can do within your community, and then, of course, media as an important partner, and, of course, the seniors in any educational effort. Suspicious activity reports are the mechanism, just to make those of you who don't have a fine understanding of how it works within our banks, the suspicious activity report is very often the best mechanism to get financial exploitation into the system. It is just a confidential report that's made. It can be shared with law enforcement investigating. And when our bankers are asking, well, should we do a SAR on this or not, I simply can reply, if something ain't right. SAR, it's just an easy acronym for that. And it better to be filling out too many than not enough. When we get into the stats in a minute, that will become even more readily apparent. All of our bankers in Oklahoma are mandatory reporters of financial exploitation, which I'm assuming is probably the case in many of your states. So people have the ability to give certain information. We can look and see if the children are on the accounts. Are there ways that we can get it into the system easily? Filing the SAR is a great way to do it, and reaching out to our wonderful folks in Adult Protective Services. The Triad group in this system is a mechanism for people to be the eyes and ears and hear about other people needing help, and that's very often how we get people into the system. Adult Protective poll number 2. I've skipped the poll here. We have a poll that is asking if you have used SARS. Is that something you're familiar with? And I can see that most of you have at least some knowledge of that. It is a great thing for you to become acclimated with. I just did a webinar with CFPB, I forget, it's BCFP now, I think, and FinCEN on webinars. So that is available online for the next year, so you can see what FinCEN would like you to do on that. And we'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Jason. Suspicious activity reports we've covered, so we'll go to Adult Protective Services. Their role is one of the most critical here. The Triad people are reaching out to them. We're reaching out to them. Sometimes it's your law enforcement that you want to have first to the table. If there's a criminal act, if somebody is being hurt, if something is happening locally where we can grab up the perpetrator, then it's going to be law enforcement first. When that person is unable to understand that they're being defrauded, then a lot of times we go to our wonderful partners at Adult Protective Services. They can assess and determine. One of the critical things that we talk to groups about when we're educating is lack of executive function. And what that means is this. That is that person that comes into the bank and you can say, Ms. Brown, this is not Publishers Clearinghouse. Bayou Title did not write their check for it, and this doesn't make sense. And you will think that they get it, and they will be very grateful. I'm sorry. I appreciate you taking care of me. I'll never do this again. The next day, the next week, whatever the interval, we see them again. Oh, this time it's Reader's Digest. This time it's good. The same people that fall for it again and again and again lack executive function. Because that is such a hard thing to assess, that is another role that the Triads can help us with in a wonderful way, because these people are in community. They're meeting with each other, they're talking, and they can begin to see that maybe someone is falling for things time after time, and they may be the people who can notice it and help us to get it into the system. We did an intervention here with an attorney who was very, very bright and well-placed, but because she presented well into the community, it took a group of us. It takes a village, and we all met with her, intervened, and asked enough questions that APS could then determine that she lacked executive function, and we were able to get her a guardianship, which she needed for a whole lot of reasons. So with that, I'm going to have another poll, surprise. If you can just answer for us if you've had good access to an APS in your area. What we find here in Oklahoma is that they are wonderful. They are well-trained and some of the nicest, best-hearted people in the world. However, in Oklahoma, budgets are such that they have really taken some of the big hits on the personnel side, and they just don't have enough people to get out across the state. So really delighted to see that most of you feel you have great access to that group. And we'll go to the next slide.
Hi, everyone. I am absolutely, thank you. I am delighted to be here. Hello from Oklahoma. A little background, I was the first full-time law enforcement assigned to Triad. I had never heard of it. I got some great training nationwide. And basically, Triad, the name, is not an acronym. It was designed to make us think of a triangle. So the sheriff's office typically oversees the entire county. it is encouraged then that the next group, which is all of your chiefs of police, so every municipality within a county or parish across the nation can get involved in this. It would not work at all without the senior adult community at large. So Triad is an amazing opportunity that is available to all sheriffs and chiefs of police and seniors across our nation. So what is it? What is our role? Basically, we work hard to prevent and reduce financial victimization, all victimization against our senior adult community. And our role basically is to be face-to-face, be that law enforcement officer that has the time to sit down once a month with senior adults and deploy crime prevention programs. To find out where they are in your state, you can go to the National Sheriff's Association website. I believe we can provide a link later. National Sheriff's Association has a Triad link that you click on, and it tells where those are in each prospective state. How do sheriffs and law enforcement work with volunteers? We would be nothing without our senior volunteers. We have about 600 senior adults that attend our SALT Council meetings, 19 SALT Council meetings within Oklahoma County, and we have armies that work very, very hard within Triad to deploy crime prevention programs. We just got done yesterday. We're second in the nation with the amount of children that are being raised by their grandparents. So we just got done yesterday with a backpack program full of school supplies for almost 400 kids that are being raised by their grandparents. We also have a Christmas project where we wrap gifts for Christmas. So that's kind of the difference between what is Triad and what is SALT. And I forgot my poll. I'm going to go back here. My poll here, we'll get your index fingers ready. Need to know how many of you have worked with Triad. Wow. So, Jason, you might help me out to get that pod over. There you go. Thank you. What is SALT? This is not a sodium warning. SALT is seniors and law enforcement together. And thank you for the link over there, to prevent and reduce crimes against our senior population. So basically, we don't deploy at them. We deploy crime prevention projects with them. So we come in once a month for an hour in each prospective community to be that face of law enforcement and to find out what they want. I got here and found out they wanted more driving programs, safe driving programs. So we have one scheduled for the end of August. We do that annually. And we don't like to call them elderly. It used to be in Triad, we were crimes and elderly. And now we call them chronologically gifted. So kind of curious to see how many people have heard of SALT. So get your index fingers ready once again. I'd sure like to see a lot of people know and have maybe been to a SALT Council meeting in their areas. This is something that really needs to be looked at by law enforcement. It can take just one senior adult to go to their sheriff and ask that they check into Triad and get a SALT Council coordinator in their area to bring so many programs that National Sheriff's Association has, a great many programs that you could be involved in, that you could deploy, and really there's no charge. A couple of the programs that we deploy here, we have the Young at Heart Senior Prom. That's one thing that really acts as an avenue with which a lot of seniors who had never heard of Triad, who had never heard of SALT, really got involved. The fact is that there's a lot of seniors who didn't get to go to their prom. So we host annually the Young at Heart Senior Prom. It's also the only time that law enforcement can publicly thank our all those seniors who fought in foreign wars, all of our inactive military. It's a wonderful opportunity. And the ladies like it because they get to dance with the cops, as you see in the picture. Shopping for grandparents raising grandchildren. We do this 4 days in October and November. We have 4 shopping days and 4 wrapping days. Keeps us rather busy. And then Older Driver Safety Day. This is a program where we have an instructor come in, and the seniors really like this. We do the car fit safety. So we go out into the parking lots and have them drive through, and we fit them into their automobiles. This is a wonderful safe thing to do. We find a lot of seniors are seated too low. They're way too close to the steering wheel. That airbag deploys at 300 miles per hour. And so we adjust them to their car, make sure that their mirrors are set properly. Older Driver Safety Day also offers local seniors here an opportunity to get certified. It's a 6-hour course, and they get certified. They walk away with a certificate to get a cheaper rate on their car insurance, and everybody is always for that. So we serve light snacks, and a lot of seniors attend. So why implement Triad? I really like how the founding father brought this about. He could see that seniors were home. They were ready with that sense of community to report when other people were victimized. However, when they were victimized, they had such a high respect and regard for law enforcement, they didn't call to take a gun off the street, a sheriff from chasing a rapist, to take a report because their television set had been stolen. And until we developed a real rapport with them, they were not reporting the crimes. It is said, and is still true today, that scams and frauds are the most underreported of all crimes. And it's hard for us to count what isn't there. So by the year 2030, it will be 7 times more senior adults. This is, we are thankful to our medical industry for helping that come about. But law enforcement should really take a look at getting Triad started. This is also a way to really complete a healthy community services division. I know a lot of sheriff's office and police departments have many different programs that are geared toward youth, and this is important for seniors because there's less eyes on that senior's life than with children. How to start a Triad is very easy. National Sheriff's Association stands ready. The county should take the lead in this and ask municipal police chiefs to be involved, to dedicate a person in their department who could serve as a SALT Council coordinator and attend a meeting once a month. Bring in local information so that local people can find out what's going on in their neighborhoods, what happened down the street that caused, the sirens to go off last night, or what they're looking for. If they're looking for a certain vehicle, seniors stand ready to be our eyes, and that's very helpful to law enforcement. As far as preparing the Triad Cooperative Agreement, those are done. There are many nationwide. I could be of assistance there. We just re-signed ours in 2016. We had a 20-year signing agreement and re-signed, rededicated towards it, and I stand ready to help in that respect with a good model for a cooperative agreement. Then you just invite the media, and this is where media can be your friend. This is where a lot of really good information finally makes it to the media. I hear a lot of seniors say, I don't want to watch the news anymore because it's just all blood and guts. Here in Oklahoma, that has really made a turnaround. We have some very positive things that go out as we care for our senior adult community.
Okay.
Elaine.
On the topic of financial exploitation, unfortunately, one of the requests was made when we were looking to put this together was what kind of stats are out there. And unfortunately, the reality is not an awful lot of stats for a number of reasons. A lot of the people that are financially exploited are embarrassed, and they just don't want anyone to know that it's happened to them. They certainly don't want family to know. There are just 1,000 reasons why to not tell someone. I did a CPA conference for FBI CPAs all across the country a couple of summers ago, and it was eye-opening for them to see the number of, the epidemic number of these cases that we are seeing. Literally, I handle half a dozen to a dozen calls on just our customers on the senior front on a daily basis here. So the numbers can be huge. It can be 100,000 here, 1 million there. It could be 2,000, and that's the last 2,000 they have. So it's across the board, but it is a terrible impact on our seniors when it happens. So that's why it's incumbent on our bankers, our triads, all of the groups that are a piece of this to wrap our arms around it. The only way that I can imagine getting a sense of the numbers is if we can get our bankers to really do their SARS. Again, if something ain't right, let's fill out the SARS. Let's at least get it in the system and check off that wonderful financial exploitation box so people can know exactly what is happening. Even if you don't know the perpetrator, very, very often they're out of the country, it's happening over the computer. You don't have to know the name of the person, but if you can put in enough information, maybe the IP address, maybe the pattern of how they're approaching them, then we can figure out a commonality and aggregate some of these cases. And there may be a way for us to get numbers. Right now, it remains just simply an anecdotal event. I can tell you anecdotes till the cows come home, and you don't run out of stories. Just a recent example, we just had a gentleman here whose wife was involved in a romance scam, unfortunately for him, romance scam. She had been contacted over words with friends, which I now learn is not an uncommon thing. That was something that hadn't been on my scope like it probably should have. But as we researched and got enough information from them, and bankers, the more information you can get us, the more we can get in the system and figure out maybe some resolution to it. In this case, I was able to track down the person that the wires were going to in Massachusetts, talked to the lady's son and then to her, and eventually we learned that she was doing this. She was technically a money mule. She was just funneling the money out of the country for the bad guys. She had people all over the country sending her money. When her son later asked me, do you think it's over $1,000? We're worried about this. I had to tell him, no, it's at least in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is one person that's a money mule, which is another thing that our bankers are looking for. Very often the people will come in as a money mule. If you don't know that terminology, they think they're being romanced by someone. They think they're being told that they won a lottery, whatever the story is, and then they dash up to the bank, get the money, wire it out. Not an uncommon scenario, but that is just a tiny piece of the ones that we see, and the good that we can do, because we were able to shut the grandma down that was the money mule without meaning to be. In our education, when we're talking to the triad community and educating them, and anytime I do seniors programs, a lot of people don't understand how someone can be taken time and time again, or how they could fall for it. I had a friend the other day who just said, when the IRS calls and threatens you, who would believe that? Well, a lot of people would believe it, not necessarily just seniors, but bigger among that community. The keys that can tip someone over the social engineering line where they're able to get in our brains are really three things that you can watch for with your customers: greed, emotions, and fear, and easily explained how those fit into the picture. The greed, best example I can give of that is the lottery. I have a friend, Ed, who calls me on the phone every other week still. He's been doing it for about 14 years now. And every time he's like, yeah, but this time this lottery is real. This time there's a car. He can name me the car dealership. And I have to set him down and say, no, I'll call the bad guys on your behalf. And he continues. He lacks executive function, as we had mentioned earlier. You will never pull him back from believing that it is good. The second way they can tip people over, and this is the biggest one we're seeing right now and that our bankers are looking out most for, and that's emotions. If they can get your emotions involved, then they can perpetrate the scam. A great example of that is the grandparent scam. We all know that, where they call in the middle of the night, it's your favorite grandson, and I've been hurt, or I'm arrested, I've been at a wedding, and yes, I was drinking. Don't tell mom and dad. When we talk to the Triad groups and we educate our customers within the banks, one of the big things that we say time and time again is no one can tell you not to talk to family. And sometimes you can just see a relief come over people's faces. It's like they really hadn't thought of it in that way. But if they are educated within the Triad groups, within the community, then it's not going to happen to them. Unfortunately, the biggest scam that we're seeing out there now, romance scams are epidemic, isn't even a strong enough word for it. They are through the roof. And it starts with 100 different reasons. Maybe someone is lonesome, they're newly widowed, widower, and they want to connect with someone that they think can help them in the heart category. The romance scams have been so bad that we see one lady had sent every dime she had for her apartment, and we had to get people to help take care of her. The numbers are huge on the romances, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think that's one of the hardest ones to break people away from, and they keep trying to come back around. So it's just a matter of knowing those stories and being able to educate them. The third prong is fear, and if someone can get them fearful, they're going to be able to get in anyone's head, much less a senior's head. The IRS scam is a great example of that. We had a lady in her late 90s, and sharp as a tack, she presented at one of our local banks trying to pull out $9,000 in cash. The teller got politely nosy and said, ma'am, I hope you're going to take a vacation or do something fun. And she had to say, no, honey, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I didn't pay some of my taxes, so I have to wire this money to Houston. That grandma was so sharp that she was able to get me the wiring instructions on that account. So we were able to shut down the account in Houston and save several people that had sent their money through there. So the more we know, the more we can help, but a lot of these people don't want to be forthcoming at the beginning of these scams. The ED and the AA sponsor concept is simply this. I have found that the bankers, the Triad leaders, everyone who is talking to our seniors operates much like an AA sponsor, in that people only come to us when they're in a crisis, and at that point, if we can talk them down, then we're able to save big losses. So it's kind of that partnership feeling that we take on with them. The biggest part of the equation, the biggest part of what we see happening, it's especially critical when someone is isolated. I see that in, I would even say a majority of the times. They don't have to be totally isolated, just if they spend a lot of the day by themselves, lonesome, family's not calling. And I feel like that is one of the best things that the Triad groups do, because it gives them a community. Not only people they can talk to, but also people who understand the scams, people who have been getting the same kind of training and who can talk to them and talk them down from losing their hard-earned money. Seniors often have the money, and that is why the bad guys are going to pick on them, and that's always one of the first things that I like to tell them, because it's not because they're any less talented in the brain area or any less capable of doing things. It's just simply they have the money, so the fraudsters are going to target them. And take it away, Kim.
This is, something that I remember doing back 23, I think, years ago when Triad was participated in more across the United States. At that time, we had a partner that was able to buy the telephone caller ID boxes, and we were able to get like a train load of them for Oklahoma, and I remember bringing them from the next county to this county, to Oklahoma County, and giving them to seniors that could not afford a caller ID box. And now we're saying, you can't trust that caller ID box. There are so many ways that these criminals have to make that call look like it's coming from the IRS or that doctor or wherever they say they're from. So now we're saying, don't trust your caller ID. Trust your telephone answering machine more so, and cause these people to leave a message. If you know the number, if you know that's your daughter or your doctor, then yes, answer your telephone, but not to anyone that you don't know. Answering your phone is just like answering your door. We don't say just hang up. And I cringe when I hear the television media say that as they talk about new scams, just like Elaine just mentioned, the IRS scam. First of all, the IRS doesn't call your home, but you shouldn't just hang up. You shouldn't be answering it if you don't know who it is. So now we say don't answer it. Just let your machine get that and leave a message. Most of the time, they don't want to leave a message. I have seen some of the IRS scams that were scathing messages that sent seniors into fear. Again, this is where Triad steps in. This is where seniors can come to a meeting, and often do, with a cell phone where they've recorded the phone message that's scathing, that says, you're not going to have a dime left. You better attorney up. There's not going to be a penny to be left to your children. We're done with you. And they get pretty scathing. So this gives our seniors locally through Triad a place to come and a face to see that's first line law enforcement to talk to. Again, you're not going to get anywhere with senior adults until you have that rapport with them and they trust you. I have to say, glad to see some of the people that are on this webinar today that are senior companions. I side with you on this, that much like we are the first line of trust, the senior companions many times are who senior adults tell when they have been scammed. So glad to have you on this webinar.
Okay, a couple of things to add on to what Kim was saying there. I'm so glad she made the point to just not answer the phone, because once you answer it, then obviously people know that there's a live person at the other end. But I also hope you understand that the level, when Kim is saying scathing, I had a lady who was told that they were in her parking lot with a sniper rifle. She was scared to death, calling me late at night on a weekend. There are stories that they're telling these people, or we're going to come drag your behind, not said as nicely, to the cold, hard jail cell. That's how they always say it. That's how they got the lady in her advanced 90s to be so fearful. Also on the phone calls, and another tip, I've had so many people ask me recently about why they're getting calls that look, it's their area code and it's their exchange for their cell phone, and then the next four numbers will be different. They simply do that because it can be somebody else's number, and if you dial back to that number, you'll find that person didn't call you. But what they're doing is using spoof card or whatever mechanism they're using to alter that caller ID. They're using something that feels like home, and if it's my area code and my exchange, I might believe that somebody I know. Another thing that they're really doing a lot, and I don't know that I totally understand this, is that they are mimicking back your phone number entirely. So it will be a representation of your number on the caller ID. The funny thing about that, I had a dear lady in Ponca City who came to me afterward, and she said, I had that happen. It looked like my number on my caller ID, and I said, ma'am, I'm sure you really got it and you didn't pick it up. And she said, no, honey, I did pick it up. And I said, ma'am, that really makes no sense because you knew you weren't calling yourself. And she said, no, honey, but I thought it might be my husband. Now, that's an adorable story, and I loved that lady. But the fact remains that they confused her enough that she, a very smart woman, was willing to pick up the phone. I have, before I go into the education, on the education level, if you'll go onto the internet, we have wonderful resources through our federal partners, and there are lots of places with resources that we'll talk more about. But while I was listening, I also got an email from our wonderful Steve Baker, who was with the FTC, and he's now with Better Business Bureau, and he has sent me 3 links that he has done stories on romance scams and those types of lottery scams, those types of issues. So I will give it to our DOJ partners and get it in your hands if you would like to have his information, because they're always wonderful. Now, on to the slide at hand, the effective education. It is better in groups because if you're talking to a person one-on-one, I can sit knee to knee and someone will finally say, I'm not going to wire the money, and they might be in tears, and it's a tough thing to do. But they actually learn better if 2 things. If they can learn before the scam has happened, which is why the triads are so brilliant again, and if they can learn in community where they have the friends that they're able to trust and to say, hey, what do you think about this, when they're not having to ask family or their banker or whoever, where they might feel some embarrassment. If you're talking to seniors, it needs to be someone they can trust, and you need to develop that rapport, find a way to have rapport with them. I happen to be an Okie who was raised in a feed store in a little town called Blair. Now, when I'm going into rural communities, I don't hesitate to lead with that, because there are going to be those people who get that. They get that I didn't lock my doors when I was growing up, and they get those things that are our commonalities, and they're going to open up and listen to you better, obviously, with your triad groups and any time you're doing educational events. You need to know the real current stories, because if you don't know what stories or what scams you're telling them, they're going to one-up you with what's happening now. So you need to be sure that you've researched and you've talked to folks who are getting those calls and know what is happening today when you're out there. Humor, I think that's critical for any time you talk to people. It's just, people listen better. If you laugh with me, you'll like me better. That's an old quote, but which makes you more open to my ideas, and that's one of my favorite quotes. If you feed them, they will come. Our banks are very good to provide lunches when Kim does her events like the senior prom. Have something they can munch on, and that's always a thing that'll pull them in. And also, don't ever forget to include their family, because that's who needs to be watching out for them, and they need to know what the seniors are hearing so that they can also help in anything that they're able to help with. We've tried to provide you with some resources. One of the old-time FTC books on identity theft, still a wonderful book. It's an identity theft recovery plan. Now, it used to be called Take Charge. That may be how you would know of it. Our securities group here has some wonderful investment, because a lot of the seniors are hit on investment frauds. I love the information they have. They have some really powerful videos that are real stories, and they really resonate with people out there. On the next slide, I know I use the old logos for the Money Smarts. I realize that too late, but if you go on and look for Money Smarts for older adults, a wonderful piece to use in your programs. as well as our attorney, Mary Beth Gard, has a favorite piece, the managing someone else's money, the little green ones that you see on the bottom left-hand side. That's something that the banks, the triads, anyone who has a group where they might be placed in a position to be handling someone's money, and that was not the norm for them. That they're all free, and it's such wonderful information. And then saveandinvest.org, also a wonderful piece. Kim.
Yes, I am delighted to talk about our Triad refrigerator cards. I'm sitting here at my desk, and I have a huge stack ready for a presentation tonight. Kind of wanted to mention the Words with Friends. I know, Elaine, there's so many people out there that are playing Words with Friends, and there's a chat mechanism to that. And just wanted to tell everyone that's a real good way that these scam artists get to know a little bit about our seniors. So if you've got parents or people that you care about, be sure and tell them about that.
I should have said that, and thanks for saying that. There is the chat mechanism is called Hangout. So if you hear people going to Hangout, that's a red flag sign. And the Words with Friends, I thought everybody on there was geeks and nerds, because I am one of those, but I have been disabused of that notion. They're pulling them to Hangout. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome. Our Triad refrigerator cards are free. We print those here on cardstock. They are a wonderful, wonderful way to reach out to your senior adult community and your emergency medical technicians. That's the first thing you're going to be asked when you go to the doctor or you have a car accident. What medications are you on? So we give these free to our seniors. The front of it just lists some of their basic information. The back lists all of their medications. It's huge. It's bright yellow. It's a good reminder to take your medications. The other thing is, if you have a stroke and you can't communicate, the first place that first responders are going to look if it's in your home is on your refrigerator door. So every police department, every sheriff's department should have these and share those with their emergency medical technicians locally. Also, we have for the wallet, we have the trifold medication cards for wallets. This is a great way to get your sheriff's office or police department's name. I stand ready to share this template with any sheriffs around the nation or chiefs of police around the nation, any community services. I can email this to you. You can change the logos on it and print those out and cut those up and get those right to your senior adults. I will have to say, one of the little side blessings from having these is that seniors have my name and number at the ready in their wallet should they need my assistance.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I don't know if everyone has such a phenomenal resource in their area, so thank you for being so generous with it. Another resource we have on the Elder Justice website, I'm just going to drop the link into the chat and send that in now. I think that's going. I think it's going. Maybe not. There. So on justice.gov, if you look at the section on financial exploitation, there is an elder abuse resource roadmap, and that gives you all the federal websites that help with different kinds of financial exploitation. So there's an IRS scam kind of pathway. There's the investment frauds that Elaine was talking about with FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, also FINRA for investments, and CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Branch. So all of that information is on the website there. And then also there's Senior Scam Alert is just a list and links to some of the common scams that are out now that I think both Kim and Elaine have already spoken to: the romance scam, the grandparent scam, the IRS scam where people are saying that you owe taxes and you don't. There's also some others like the lottery scam that I think was mentioned. And this Words with Friends is new. Be careful of that. There's some other scams, and we'll try to keep it updated so that people can go to that link and see what's going on and guard against those things. Also, we have the Get Involved presentation, which includes how to guard against financial exploitation. So you can print that right off or watch a webinar on that or present a webinar to a small group of people, all for free. And we hope that that's helpful for folks. All right.
Okay, and we just wanted to make the point, as again and again, no one person or no one group is going to be able to handle the epidemic that is senior exploitation, and it is required of all of us to try to help our vulnerable seniors in our world. Networking is critical. It's all about education up front, and the bankers want to be involved with our triads, with our other law enforcement, with APS, with every group, because who knows what part of the group is going to help that person, but it's incumbent on all of us to make that effort and network.
Oops. Sorry, I went back one slide. And I guess we're going to open it up for questions. And I have a question from Kathy, hoping to find out a central location that has bank credit card representatives that deal with fraud to assist us in proper information to request restitution for their institution or their customers in our cases. And I guess that would be open to Elaine and then maybe Kim.
That is kind of a hard one to answer. We try to have numbers for our regional representatives for each of the credit card groups. We actually have a group of our bankers who meet with Secret Service and other law enforcement entities across the state to talk about credit card issues. So we try to do it at that level. It would be knowing your person in your region, or if you have access or if you know someone who is a member of the group IAFCI, that's the International Association of Financial Crimes Investigators. And that group has wonderful directories, so we can find people with those different groups. The problem with that is it's kind of a moving target. So you need a directory like that so that you can know who is in that position at the point in time where you need it. Kim?
Thank you. Sorry, Lori, was I stepping on your... So I think there were some questions about the trifold fridge cards, and thank you, Kim, for sharing your information. I've put it up on the screen now, the contact information for both Elaine Dodd and Corporal Kim Lopez, our presenters today, so that you can contact them if you have questions about this webinar. There is another question here. I'm sorry, I'm out of the pod. Lori, I'm going to turn it to you for the question because I've lost it, unfortunately.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, good.
So the question is, how are triads different than interdisciplinary teams?
Well, this is overseen by law enforcement. It includes all law enforcement, so it is literally county-wide. It is specific to small communities. Again, we have 19 different meetings that cover Oklahoma County. So we are different in that there is, all the law enforcement is involved.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, in this county, yeah.
If you have other questions, feel free to type those in the chat pod for our presenters. You see a couple of other questions coming in, or at least some folks typing.
Okay.
I see the one about in Virginia, Triad is under the office, the AG's office or Attorney General's office. That is absolutely a model to have law enforcement oversee it and to include other law enforcement. There are a great many triads across the nation that have to do with the DA's office and police departments. So yeah, that is perfectly permissible within the triad concept.
I'm just going to put a link into the organization that Elaine mentioned in the chat box. I hope that's not the
.org, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Just simply that first part will do it, and they very often have 2-for-1 membership deals. So find somebody who wants to buddy up with you. It really is. It's worth the price of registration simply for the directory. I use it literally multiple times a day.
I saw a question here about APS being involved in Triad. Absolutely. Your APS people, should they have the time, they're usually way overworked and way underpaid, but they could go to a sheriff's office or police departments and absolutely sign an agreement. That is perfectly permissible within the Triad concept.
Here's another question for you, Kim, I think. How will we go about implementing a triad in our county? Our neighboring county, I noticed, does have triad in Salt.
Good question. Just go to your sheriff. Have a couple of people, with you that are interested in sitting down once a month, perhaps at a congregate meal site or a senior center or a church. We meet at police departments, churches, senior centers. We even have one huge meeting in Oklahoma City. We meet at a Shriners Temple. So anybody that's able to allow us to come in and not charge us rent, if you will, just go to your sheriff and see if he's open to that, and let him know what this concept is. They can go through National Sheriff's Association to get educated on how to implement. I, again, stand ready to help any sheriff around the nation get this going. From there, you just go to your police departments and say, hey, the sheriff wants to head this up. Would you be interested in signing an agreement that you would assign someone to be in a meeting 1 hour a month in your area? I want to...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Maybe you've done the same thing.
Yeah, maybe. I just wanted to say that one of the things that is very real is when you go to your sheriff's office or your police departments, they are literally, their time is precious. And they may say, look, we don't have time to do that. One of the things that Triad has foreseen like 23 years ago when this was implemented was that in SALT councils, we give the first 10 minutes to the police department, so that if they need to get back on the road or go do investigations or go work on reports, they can go do that. So, basically when a sheriff goes to the police departments and says, can you assign someone to this, it typically won't take them more than 10 minutes a month to meet with their own, communities. Some communities are larger. In Oklahoma City, that's the larger of my municipalities. We have 3 SALT councils there and working on a 4th. So we have a north side, an east side, a south side, and we're working on a west side. So be open to the fact that some communities are larger and need more than one SALT council to meet with all seniors.
I think we have time for one last question from Ginger. How do we share SAR information with APS if that agency is not considered a law enforcement agency in that state?
You don't exactly share SAR information. The SAR is confidential. SARs can be accessed by law enforcement. In every state, there will be a SAR review team that's looking at them and parsing them out to folks to investigate. Law enforcement can get information from the SARs. if you want to get the information to APS, we rely here on the fact that we're mandatory reporters. So the bank is not saying we filed a SAR and here's the information. The bank is saying, hey, we want you to help this person. And we can always find an end around if you feel that you want to have the law enforcement people come in and then bring in the family and whatever helps you to bridge that gap. There are ways to make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our presenters today. It looks like we're out of time, so thank you all for your participation and your engaging chat. It's very good to see a lot of conversation around this topic, and hope that this has been helpful to you. Feel free to follow up with either one of our presenters, or if you have any remaining questions, you can email the Elder Justice Initiative, elder.justice@usdoj.gov. Thank you so much to Kim and Julie and Elaine, and thank you all out there for your work and your participation and dedication to the field. We appreciate it so much. Hope to see you on
Thank you all.
on a future webinar, and that concludes our webinar today. Thank you.